Welcome back to Clone Brewing, the YouTube channel where we brew clone recipes of major commercial beers. Today I'm taking on a giant of the beer world, Guinness Irish Stout. Now, Guinness is more than just a beer. It's a cultural institution, an Irish icon. It has a rich flavour profile and it's extremely difficult to replicate. So we're going to give it a go today. Let's jump over to Brewfather and I can show you how we've constructed this recipe. Right, so the inspiration for this recipe is taken from Brew Your Own magazine's Guinness Draft Clone recipe, which is available at the URL that you see at the top of the screen here, or if you just Google Guinness Clone recipe Brew Your Own, it will take you to this recipe. So some slight differences to the recipe that I'm going to be brewing, but generally we've taken our inspiration from this one. So this one is a 19 litre batch. We're going with a 21 litre batch. The ABV on this one is around 4.2 and ours comes in at around about 4.3. Some of the ingredients are more or less the same. So this recipe calls for English 2-roll pale ale malt, 2.3 kilograms. I've gone with pale ale Maris Otter, 2.3 kilograms. This also calls for 1.1 kilograms of flaked barley. We've also gone with flaked torrefied barley, but slightly less, 1.01. We've gone with in our recipe. And this recipe also calls for 450 grams of roasted barley, and I've gone with around 400 grams. Also calls for hops, 68 grams of 5% alpha acids, East Kent Goldings. We've gone with around 67 grams in there. And then this recipe also calls for liquid yeast, either white yeast or White Labs Irish Ale yeast. I'm not overly keen on using liquid yeast at the moment, so I've gone with Safale SO4 yeast for my recipe. What else on here? Yeah, this recipe calls for, in terms of the souring process of Guinness, to take a sample of your wort and add a small amount of Brettanomyces or Lactobacillus and let to sour, and then add it back into beer a little bit later on. Not really the process I like to follow, but let me take it across to Brewfather and show you how we've built out the recipe on here. So as I mentioned, I'm going with a 21 litre batch here, so you can reduce that amount on your equipment profile. Then you're looking for a pre-boil volume of 25 litres, brew house efficiency of 75 and mash efficiency of 78.6%. Not sure if I'm going to hit those numbers, but we'll see. The style I've gone for here is classic Irish style dry stout. It's giving us ABV of 4.3%, original gravity of 1045, final gravity of 1012. And then the only other thing that was a standout here, we're slightly above the range for IBUs, but we'll see how that turns out. So from an ingredient perspective, the fermentables in here, 2.63 kilograms of pale ale Maris Otter, 1.01 kilograms of flaked torrefied barley, and 400 grams of roasted barley. So in terms of percentages, what you're aiming for here is roughly 65% of your pale ale malt, Maris Otter, around 25% of your torrefied or flaked barley, and around 10% of your roasted barley. Hops, I'm adding in 67 grams of East Kent Goldings at the start of the boil in 60 minutes. Yeast, I will be using, as mentioned, SO4 from Safale. So a Safale English Ale dry yeast, which I just find easier than using the liquid yeast, but it's a matter of preference. You do what's good for you. Fermentation profile I'm aiming for here is I'm going to pitch at around 19 degrees, let it free rise or let it gently rise up to around 21 degrees over the space of 2 days, and then keep it at 21 for approximately 10 days. I may decide to cold crash. Haven't really decided on that yet, but we'll see. Not really necessary for stouts. For our mash profile, protein rest at 57 degrees for 30 minutes, then ramped up to 67 degrees for 60 minutes, and then a mash out at 76 degrees Celsius for 10 minutes. Water profile on here, as I have probably mentioned previously, I use reverse osmosis water, so using the handy calculator within Brewfather is really, really useful for me to know what to add into my beers based on the target profile I'm aiming for. So the target profile being Dublin stouts and dark ales. If I input that information into Brewfather and click the auto button here, it will tell me what's needed. One other thing to mention here is if you want to adjust the mash pH of your beer. So if I turn off acid mash down here, you can see that I'm kind of out of range here in terms of what I'm aiming for in my pH. So I'm looking for around 5.4 pH for this beer. So I'm out of that range. So if I toggle on the acid mash and decide to play around with these numbers, you can see by adding more lactic in here, will reduce my pH up here. So if I'm aiming for around 5.4, that's what I want to, that's the amount I want to add on here. So if I just save those to the recipe, you'll see those appear on here. So we'll see whether I need to add in the lactic acid or not once I take a sample from the mash, and we'll see where we sit in terms of the pH. One final thing just to address on here, as I mentioned when looking at the Brew Your Own, there are different ways in terms of souring your beer. Naturally sour your beer like the way that Brew Your Own have suggested. The way I'm going to go with myself is adding a couple of mils of lactic acid in at kegging time. You can add anything in from 1 to 5 mils to kind of give that sour tang from your beer. I'm going to go with around 2 to see what that's like. And then if you didn't want to even try, you could go with replacing some of your base malt with acid malt, and that may give some type of a sour tang off there as well. So that's the recipe. I will put a link to this onto the YouTube channel in the comment section. So let's get back to the brew day. Let's get brewing. So before any brew day begins, of course, when I'm brewing with Oro water, I need to collect that water first. So let me show you my Oro setup. I am hoping to get this plumbed in actually to this area over the next week or two, but at the moment it is an outside tap. So this is my Oro system. I may have spoken about this before, but it's a compact 4-stage Oro system by Vyar, Vyar. It's currently available at about £44 on their website, which I believe is vyar.com, vyar.com. I'm not sponsored by them, but it is quite a handy, cheap system to collect your Oro water. It does approximately 8 litres an hour, according to its website. I don't think it does that as fast as it says it does, but in around that time. So I collect my Oro water in these 20 to 25 litre drums. So that's been on a couple of hours now, and I nearly have enough water to start brewing. Before today's brew day as well, just wanted to talk you through my Grainfather system. Obviously, if you've watched previous videos, you know I've been using Grainfather for a long time. This G30 is the newer version of the G30. So let me just talk you through that. The main changes in the newer version is the malt basket. So a couple of other things that I'm not overly enthused about. So previously, all of the Grainfather vessels had Grainfather embossed, I think that's the right word, onto them. Now it's printed on in this kind of black print onto the stainless steel. The markings inside, you probably can't see them at the moment. The markings inside are not as bold as they used to be, which makes it difficult to see what level you're at with the liquid in your Grainfather. And then also the main advance in this is the malt pipe, or the malt basket, which now, if I put that down there, no longer has a pipe running up the center, which is a huge help. It has these, what you can see in there, holes in the inside of the malt basket, which allows draining as you're mashing. It also has rolled plate at the bottom, so no more of those horrible rubber or silicone fiddly bits that you need to get on onto your bottom pipe and the top one, which saves a lot of time. It's also a lot easier to clean, this newer system. So I just wanted to give you a quick run through that before we begin today. So our recipe today calls for around 13.6 litres of mash water. So I've already added that in. Generally, how I add my water into the Grainfather is I use the markings on the inside. I can fairly trust them to be correct. So I've gone with, it's roughly around 13.5 in there at the moment. I need to add some water into my Sparge water heater as well, and then do my water additions, the water chemistry. So let me get going on that now, and we'll be back in a few moments. So next up is the water additions. The more and more I brew, the more I've come to understand that water chemistry is extremely important in your beers. So that's why I tend to use RO water, and then add these minerals into my mash and Sparge water to get to the right levels for the right type of beer. Also doing a lot of reading on pH levels as well. And something I've come to understand a little bit more, I'm no expert in water chemistry, is being able to manipulate your pH levels with some lactic acid into the mash. I'm also, for this recipe, as part of the souring process, as mentioned when we were looking at the recipe, I'm going to be using a couple of mils of lactic acid to add that sour style taste into the final beer, just at kegging time. So we'll see how that turns out as well. So onto the water additions. So I'm going to add 0.4 grams of calcium chloride first of all. So to be really on point with your water additions, you kind of do need one of these specific weighing scales that are decimal points in there as well. So first of all, you pop your vessel on there and tare to level it off, and then we're going to go with 0.4 grams of calcium chloride. So this is quite a delicate operation. So I've already gone over 0.7, so try to scoop a little bit back out. 0.42, that'll do. I'm not going to be pedantic about this. Next, I need to add in 0.54 of Epsom salt. So these are my mash additions, and I'll get to the Sparge ones in a second. So 0.54. Oh, that was lucky. 0.53. Again, I'm going to be not going to be pedantic. Oh, yeah, bang on. 0.53. I'm not going to be pedantic over 0.1 on there. So again, I'll tare that again, and then finally we're going to be adding in 0.9 of gypsum. And these additions are to get us to the Dublin stouts and dark beers water profile that are in Grainfather. So 0.9. I'm looking for. Okay, I've got that to 0.91. So that's all of my water additions for my mash. I'm going to pop them in now, and then I'll come back and do the ones for the Sparge. So same process again. Tap your vessel on there, press the tare button to level it out, and then into the Sparge water we want 0.43 grams of calcium chlorides. 0.43. 0.39. Quite a delicate operation. 0.44, that's good enough. Next we need to tare that again, and then we're going to add in our Epsom salt, which is 0.58. Oh, I've overshot that ever so slightly, so let's take it a little bit back out. A little bit too far. So all right, I'm only getting it down to about 0.60. Look, it's not a massive. And then finally, we want the 0.97 of gypsum. Again, I need to tare that again. 0.97. Now, when I spoke about using the lactic acid to manipulate the pH levels, I will only do that after taking a pH reading about 10 minutes into the mash, see where my pH is at, and if it needs to be reduced. We're aiming for around 5.4 today for to add a bit of body into the stout. 5.4 is recommended, so if I'm too far above that, I can add a little 1 mil, 2 mil maybe of lactic acid into the mash to reduce the pH levels. Okay, it's time to get the mash on. Our strike water temperature is up to 61 degrees. Let me go find what we're aiming for. I think it's around 57 for the protein rest. Yes, that's correct. So I'm going to lower that down to 57 and we're going to start mashing in. The kind people at Get Brewed in putting together this recipe for me have kindly crushed the grains for me, even though I didn't ask them to. Thanks, Get Brewed. But that's fine. It'll be a good consistent crush and start to get it in. I'm not going to lie, I'm not really sure what the benefit of the 30-minute protein rest is, but in saying that, I'm not going to deviate from the recipe that was given to me. So we'll give it a go and see how it turns out. Oh, that smells delicious. Those lovely roasty flavours. I would imagine with the amount of flaked oats in this recipe, could have potential for this to be a little bit porridgey, but we'll see. I think we should be okay. It's not a very big grain bill for this one. It's only just over 4 kilograms. So just make sure this is all nicely mashed in. And I'm actually not going to take my pH reading until I get to mash temperature. Because I'm not actually sure whether the pH numbers will change at 57 degrees. I don't know enough about that, so I'm going to wait until I get up to mash temperature, give it a few minutes at that 66, is it, or whatever it is, and then take a pH reading and see do I need to make any adjustments from that point onwards. So the protein rest is done for 30 minutes, a long 30 minutes. So now I am going to set the timer to 60 minutes. I've already upped the temperature to 67 degrees, and we're going to start recirculating. Give it about 10 minutes or so, and then I'm going to check the mash pH, see where we're at, and see if I need to make any adjustments there. So on goes the pump. So I've taken a sample from the mash, and in order to cool it down to a temperature in which I can test the pH, I've used this 2 jug system. So some cold water in that jug, smaller jug, let it rest in there for a few minutes or so. You can also use a little bit of ice in the water as well if you need to cool it down a little bit faster. Ideally, I'm wanting to get this down to around 50 degrees Celsius, so it'll work with my pH meter, and I actually have this down to about 40 degrees Celsius at the moment, so perfect to be tested. So let me get up and set the temperature compensation on my pH meter, which is a MW101 Pro pH meter. So I have that sitting in water for the last few minutes, and now I'm going to... So if I can remind you, what we were aiming for with this was a pH of around 5.4, and if I can just show you this, we have landed at 4.39. So ultimately, I don't need to change anything. I don't need to add in any lactic acid to get this down, because I've been doing some reading on this, and it recommends that around about 5.4 is a good pH for stouts and dark beers, just to give it a little bit more body. Typically, we would be aiming for in around the 5.2 range, I think, in pH, but 5.4 is fine. So yeah, just in around 5.38, and I'm happy enough with that. Don't need to make any adjustments. So as you can hear, the mash is now done. So I mashed for 60 minutes at 67 degrees Celsius, and then ramped it up to 77 degrees for 10 minutes. The mash itself was getting stuck a little bit, as I anticipated, with the high level of flaked barley in there. So it was a little bit doughy at times, and the pump, whilst not getting stuck, it was running a little bit slow as well. So something to be aware of. You constantly need to store your mash in there as well, just so it's not sticking in any way. So we're at around about 77 degrees, so it's time for the sparge. So we just disconnect this. We'll get the sparge up and running. Boom. Right, so the sparge on this one is how many litres? I think it's around 14.63 litres. I imagine this is going to take a little bit while, because for a similar issue, whereas the mash was getting stuck, it is a bit doughy in there, so it may take a while to filter through into the kettle. So yeah, let's get ahead with the sparge. So that's the sparge done. Still heating up. I'm at around 87 degrees Celsius, so it'll be a little while, yeah. You probably noticed there, had to keep on stirring as I was doing that sparge. It is a little bit porridgey, so it was taking its time to drain through, so I had to give it a little bit of a helping hand, but all good. So the next step is hopefully get it up to around 98 degrees. I'm going to then take a pre-boil gravity reading. I've got myself a new toy, the Anton Pars Easy Dens density meter, so I'm going to give that a test out, see how it goes. First time using it. So yeah, be back in a couple of minutes, and we'll test out the Anton Pars Easy Dens, and we'll see what our pre-boil gravity reading is. So while I'm waiting for the wort to get up to boil, I've taken a sample to check the pre-boil gravity, and I'm going to do that with my new toy, thanks to my wonderful wife. She got me a nice new gift for my birthday a few weeks ago, which is the Easy Dens from Anton Par and the Smart Ref. So the Smart Ref is what I think I need to use. Use the same method as before. The wort into another jug with a couple of cubes of ice to cool it down, and it's showing me that is around under 50 anyway. So just give it another minute or two in there. And then, so the great thing about the Smart Ref is you need to put a small sample. And once it's hooked up to the app on your phone, which is the Brewmeister app, you select Easy Dens on there, or sorry, Smart Ref is the other one. And theoretically, what should happen here is I take a tiny sample of a couple of mils into the little dropper there. I add that into here now, and then I start the measurement. And then it should tell me here what my pre-boil gravity is. I am getting this ambient light warning, but it's telling me that my pre-boil gravity is 1.037, which is, I think, probably spot on, because my pre-boil, sorry, my final gravity is supposed to be 1.040, so we're pretty close to that. How are we doing on the boil? Look at that. Absolutely gorgeous. And we're at about 92 degrees. I can bump that up to now 100 degrees. Give that a last little stir. Look at that. Fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. A few more minutes before we get to boil, and then we'll add in the hops. So as you can hear, we're at boil temperature now, 100 degrees. So I need to set the timer for 60 minutes. That's that. And then we're going to add in the hops, which is the 67 grams of East Kent Goldings. Just going to throw them straight in. No real need to use a hop spoiler or anything like that. It's only 67 grams. It's not a massive amount, so I'm not going to overly stress about that. Give them a little bit of a stir in, and we are more or less good to go. 60 minutes wait, and I'll be back to you then at the end. So that's the end of the boil. But I'm going to leave it on for a couple of moments, and we're going to I'm going to turn off the heat. It's at 100 degrees. I'm going to recirculate through the chiller here to sanitize that before we start to look to transfer it into the fermenter. So I'm going to give this about 2 or 3 minutes just to recirculate, and that will help to sanitize the chiller, and yeah, then we're good to go. We'll be transferring into the fermenter, which I've already sanitized, cleaned, all of those things, so it's good to go. We'll throw it in there. We'll get the temperature down, hopefully in around 19 degrees, but it's a cold day today. The water will be cold, so we might get below 19 degrees. So we'll aim to pitch around 19, so I may need to plug the fermenter in, heat it up ever so slightly, and pitch in a few minutes. So yeah, 2 or 3 minutes recirculating here, and then I'll hook up the cold water supply into the chiller and the outport as well, and we'll be good to go. Right, so we've about 45 seconds left of that. It's been circulating for about 2 or 3 minutes, so I'm going to start hooking up the hose, the cold water supply, to our blue pipe here. So let me get that out. I'm not going to connect that until I have the hot water out pipe. Ooh, this is a bit of a juggling act, because these pipes are all wrapped around each other, and I don't want hot water spilling all over the floor. So this is my hot water out pipe, which I'm going to hook up to this hose, and I'm going to stop the pump. So this is the out hose. I have it going into a bucket just here to save some of that hot water that comes out for cleaning a little bit later. And now I'm going to hook up my cold water source in there, and then I'm going to go turn on my tap and start to pump that into the fermenter, and it should be going in hopefully around 19 degrees, but maybe a little bit less than that. But yeah, let me turn on the water. Okay, so if I take this out here, I want to take my temperature probe and put it in here. Oh, that's hot. And then feed that in here and start to pump, and we'll see what temperature that's going across at. So the temperature on the dial here is going down rapidly at about 40 degrees now. I also do want to take a sample here for my Easy Dens from Anton Par to see can I get an accurate reading. So let me tip out that pre-boil gravity, what was in there. So it's in around 22 degrees now. I'm going to take a sample bang on 20 if I can. So 21. So let's take a sample on here. I only need about 10 mils. So it's quite a small amount, not as much as you would typically need for a regular hydrometer. So I'm just going to, actually I don't need to cool that down, so I'll pop it over here, ready to take a sample in a moment. So yeah, that's more or less the end of the brew day. So it's going in now around about 19 degrees. We'll get the, hopefully around about the 21 litres or so. I think it'll be slightly less than that into the fermenter, about 20 litres into the fermenter. And then we will hopefully be ready to pitch, although that temperature has gone down to 17 degrees now. I may need to heat up the fermenter a little while, maybe an hour or two before I pitch in there. So yeah, let's go have a look and see where we've landed at in terms of final gravity. So I'm absolutely loving the Easy Dens from Anton Par. Again, I'm not sponsored by these guys. I didn't receive this for free, although I wish I had. This was a gift from my wife. So all I need to do is turn on the Easy Dens, go to the app on my phone, which is the Brew Meister app, pop in Easy Dens on here. I take a small sample from here, which, oh shoot, doesn't need to be more than around 2 mils, I believe, but I'm going to take slightly more. And then with this syringe which is supplied, I'm going to pop that in here. I'm going to say a start measurement on my phone, and then as I push this through, it will tell me that my original gravity is 1.042, which is 2 points above where we were hoping to get to. So hopefully you can see that. Actually 1.041 potentially on the screen. So yeah, really cool, really quick way to find out your gravity. Great little device. So that's it. I'm all done. Transferred into the fermenter. It's currently sitting at around 15.4 degrees Celsius, which is obviously too low to pitch, so we need to give it a bit of time, have that on heat. Our tilt is showing that our gravity is 1.040, but I'm more inclined to trust the Easy Dens by Anton Par. Have a feeling that's going to be a little bit more accurate than my tilt. So last thing to do really is give it a couple of hours or so, let it heat up to around 19 degrees. We'll pitch our yeast, and then take it from there. But yeah, that's the end of the brew day. Fairly good brew day. Everything more or less went as expected. I would expect this beer will be ready to go within a week. But we'll see how that goes. But I hope to have it on nitro and serving within a week to 10 days. So yeah, let me come back in a few hours, pitch the yeast, and then we're done. Right, it's time to wrap this one up. Just time to pitch the yeast. It's been probably about 2.5 hours since I finished the brew day. The temperature was sitting at around 15 degrees Celsius once I'd finished up. So it's up to about 18.6 now, which is not far off 19. So it's a good enough time to pitch. So let me just get this in here. So in my experience of using this yeast, it tends to be fairly rapid. So I would expect that this will be done in probably 3, 4, 5 days maybe. And I could potentially have it on nitro and on draft within the next week or so. But we'll see. I'll check back in on it and see how it's getting on. But the next steps for me now is to leave it alone at 19 degrees for the next day or so, and then come back in and maybe, if it's naturally rising, leave it naturally rise up to about 21. But if it's not naturally rising, just bump it up myself with the fermenter. So we'll check back in maybe in a week or so and see how things are going. So welcome back. It's been about 9 days since the brew day. Brewed this beer on Sunday the 8th of December. It's now Tuesday the 17th of December. In truth, the beer was fully fermented after about 3 days, really. It had got itself down more or less by the Wednesday after the Sunday, so 3 full days. But I've decided to just leave it a little bit longer. There's no point in rushing a stout. I just wanted to give it a little bit more time to fully ferment out and be completely sure. Probably could have kegged this a couple of days ago, but as with everything else, life gets in the way. So I'm going to take a final gravity reading now, even though I know it's fully fermented. It hasn't budged on my tilt hydrometer for days and days. So I'm going to take a final gravity reading and then just pop it into the keg and put it on my nitro mix of 75-25, the beer gas, and hopefully it'll be ready to drink in about 3 days time. So let me first take the gravity reading. Now that sample is way more than I need, but let me get going with the Anton Pars Easy Dens and we'll see where we're at. I did take a measurement of this a few days ago and it was showing up as 1.012, and considering we started about 1.042, which was off on our numbers. I only realized that afterwards, as you will have seen on the video. So we didn't hit our original gravity, but where we've landed, I think, is approximately around 4% ABV, which is all right in around the numbers that a Guinness is. Like Guinness is traditionally around 4.1, 4.2. So let me get going on this. So log into the Brewmeister app, take my sample from here, click on Start Measurement. Be handy if I turned on the device, that would be helpful. That would allow it to connect. Okay, so it's connected now. I'm just going to push this sample through. Okay, that's really interesting because it's giving me a reading of 1.0 1.014, which is slightly higher than it gave me a few days ago. Doesn't really make much sense. But what I have a feeling is that this sample that I've just took from the bottom of the fermenter is quite mixed up with some remnants of yeast, and it's quite cloudy. So I'm guessing that that may be throwing or reading off ever so slightly, that the density of this reading may be slightly higher than it actually should be. So yeah, 1.014 is what I'm getting here, whereas a couple of days ago I did get a reading of 1.012. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let that settle for about 20 minutes, half an hour or so, and see once the yeast sediment settles out I'll take another sample and give it a go and see where we've landed at. Yeah, so I've waited around about half an hour. I actually threw that sample into the fridge for a few minutes to see would it drop a little bit of the yeast out of it. I've took a sample again, ran it through the easy dens, and it is showing up as 1.012, which does give us an ABV of around 4.0. So let me just show you that quickly. So as you can see, 1.012, and it's pushing through the easy dens. So now that our reading is correct, it's time to transfer into our keg. So I'm just going to release the top of the fermenter. So we have a good airflow in there. I can see that we have, oh, that smells lovely. Around about 20, just over 20 litres in the keg. So I'm going to connect this liquid disconnect into the John Guest elbow fitting, which I've attached it to my Grainfather conical, and then we're going to attach this into our liquid outpost in here, and then I'm going to use this flow stopper from Kegland in the gas outpost, just so it lets the gas out as we're filling, and then in we go. So hopefully you can see that the liquid has started to transfer in straight away. Yeah, we're good to go. So next step is get this into the fridge, cold crash it down to about 4 degrees, and then hook it up to the mixed gas system, 75-25 mixed gas, which is 75 nitrogen, 25 CO2. Leave that on around about 36 psi for 3 days, and then just lower it down to 30 psi for serving, and we'll give it a go. So yeah, looking forward to trying this one. It does smell delicious. Can't wait to give it a try in a couple of days time or 3 days time. Welcome back. It's been about 7 days since I put the clone Guinness onto my nitro setup. So before we get into the taste test, I want to just share a couple of thoughts on the overall brewing of this clone beer. So as you will have seen earlier in the video, I slightly missed my numbers on this one, and the beer came in around 4%, which is fairly okay for a Guinness clone. It's in the range. The true traditional Guinness, I think at the moment, is 4.2%. But in saying that, I would recommend, if I was to brew this beer again, slightly upping the amount of grain. If we're going for a 19-litre batch, or 21-litre batch, whatever it was, slightly upping the amount of grains that were used, but keeping the same percentages. So I would go with still 65% of pale Maris Otter, 25% of the flaked barley, and 10% of the roasted barley. But I would slightly up the amount of those, so we would hit our numbers and get slightly above 4%. The other thing about this beer, as you will have seen on the video previously, I was expecting to have this ready after 3 days on my nitro setup. Not quite sure what's gone wrong there. It's taken about a week to get up to the level where it's giving a sufficient amount of nitro in the beer. The head retention is not where I would want it to be, or the amount of kind of head that's on the beer after pour. Not quite sure what's causing that. I'm not sure if it's my nitro setup just not functioning correctly. I have changed my beer line diameter. That could be affecting it. But not quite sure what the issue is there, because I've not had that problem before. Possibly could be the addition of the 2 mils of lactic acid affecting head retention. I don't know. But overall, they would be my kind of key reflections of going slightly more grain to get up to the right level that we're aiming for, around 4.3%, 4.2, 4.3. And yeah, keeping an eye on the levels of nitrogen that you're putting in here. Normally, it would take me 3 days at 36 psi. It's taking about 7 days to get up to a reasonably sufficient level. So, doing the taste test now, we're going to use a Guinness Nitro Surge. You may have seen these devices on the market. I'm not a huge fan of them, but I have one, and we can use it for today's taste test. So let's kick off with the real Guinness. We crack that open. We pop the device onto the can. Press the button here, and we'll give it a pour. So you can see as the liquid pours through the device, a little kind of ultrasonic, I think that's the right word, device inside activates the nitro in the beer, I guess, and it gives that lovely cascade that Guinness is known for. So we'll do this as a two-part pour. I'll let that one settle on the bar. Looks quite nice. And we'll go over to our nitro setup and see how we get on with this one. So, as I mentioned, it's not giving me the right level of head retention that I would like to see, but at the same time, it's not terrible either. So you can see, well, hopefully you can see here, I do have some level of cascade on this, not quite to the level of the actual Guinness from the Nitro Surge, and you will see as well, most likely won't have as big a head on this beer as well. But in saying that, it's not bad. I've been served worse Guinnesses in certain establishments. So we give that a moment to settle, and then we'll top them up and give it the taste test. So second part of the two-part pour with the Nitro Surge, you just tip it upside down and finish it off like so. Lovely creamy head on this beer. Lovely bit of domage on there as well. And then I'll top up the clone to get it up to full, and we'll be ready to do the taste test. Now, side by side, as you can see, not as much head retention on the clone beer, but I'm not going to be largely disappointed by that, because as I said, I've had worse Guinnesses served to me in pubs, so I won't be too stressed about that. It'd be nicer if it had a little bit more of a creamy head, but in terms of the taste test, let's give it a go. So first of all, I'm going to try the actual Guinness. That actually does look beautiful. That's a really, really nice pint of Guinness. Yeah, that's really, really good. So now let's try the clone recipe. From the original Guinness, you do get that slight tang, and that's why we added in the 2 mils of lactic acid. So you get that nice little tang off of Guinness, and I want to see, have we replicated it here? Honestly, that is superb. I would go as far as saying that's probably the best clone I've brewed, and probably one of the best beers that I've ever brewed. That is so close to a Guinness. There is some slight subtle differences, but I think we've achieved the right level of tang from that lactic acid. You can play around with that. You could go with 1 mils, 3 mils, 4 mils, whatever, to suit your own taste. But I think 2 mils was safe, and we've hit the spot with that. The only difference I would say between these two, in my opinion, obviously is better head on this one. This one is ever so slightly more roasty, ever so slight. Not a huge difference in the taste there. But that is a really, really good clone. I think I've cracked the code here. Well, I haven't cracked the code. The recipe designers have cracked the code on this one. But this is a really, really good clone, and I'd highly recommend brewing this. Could do with some slight tinkering, as I mentioned, with the recipe to get it up to 4.2 or 4.3%. But my God, that is a wonderful beer. Yeah. Well, hope you've enjoyed the video. Happy Christmas to you all. It is Christmas Eve now. I'm going to enjoy the rest of my Christmas, but I look forward to seeing you all in the new year. If you've enjoyed the video, please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you all again in 2025. Sláinte.